Hey everybody, it's your girl to be with Not Your Normal Conversation. Welcome back. It is so good to be here. I have Nika Elugardo here with me. She represents the Democratic Party for the 15th District as State Representative. And first, I have to say happy birthday to her because her birthday just passed. And so, Nika, happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's so good to have you on the show. It was very nice meeting you at my Mother's Day event. Thank you for stopping by. I know that you have a busy schedule, and it was just good to see you out and about and being very transparent. And there was a couple of things that I said, and I remember you saying, "No, no, don't say that. This is." What it is, and we can fix this, and there's ways for us to fix this, and I
Mm.
appreciate your gentleness, but also your sternness in saying, no, that's not how we're going to do this. You're not just formally incarcerated. I just appreciate your candor and your transparency and who you are and what you are representing. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what made you run for any type of politics at all? As a minority woman, I know a lot of times people will try to push you away from running for these type of seats, and you seem very headstrong about staying the course. So what made you run and want to be a part of politics?
Well, by the time I decided, I was headstrong, but like a lot of women and a lot of people of color generally, it took a lot of people pushing me for many years. And
Mm-hmm.
that's because I saw politics as a place that was for exploitation, as a place that was about dishonesty, as a place that was about supremacy and the manifestation of oppression. So I
Right.
had strong feelings as a young person. I grew up, my family was street involved and involved in various trades that are considered illicit and were especially then. And I just felt that I only ever saw politicians or even business people back in those days in the 70s and 80s come into our community to exploit. And
Right.
that gets deeply ingrained in you, and you think, like most kids, that whatever your experience is the experience of the whole world. And when I came to Boston at the age of 17, 3 weeks in, I met Mel King,
Mm.
and it took him 15 years of trying to convince me to run before I finally could understand even his history and heritage.
Right.
And that there are so many people doing different things with politics than the handful of corrupt ones that I had met or known of growing up or that you hear about. And then here in Massachusetts, and especially in Boston, the heritage is deep amongst people of color, really fighting back through politics.
Right.
And when I was in graduate school, I met some women. I was in a volunteering in a policy conference for women from around the world who had been living in conflict areas like Rwanda, Congo, Philippines, etc. And they had all decided to run for office.
Wow.
So that's why they were in this program called Women Waging Peace. And
Wow.
this is about 15, almost 20 years ago. Well, they changed the name because they thought it was too feminine, which I hated that they did that.
Mm.
So they changed it to like inclusive security, like something real boring.
Mm-hmm.
And but I liked it when it was called Women Waging Peace because we really need to understand the role of women and the role of peacemaking
Right.
and change. And historically, women have stood up no matter what the conflict is when we're losing our sons, when we're losing our daughters, when we're losing our loved ones, our partners. And we have stood up and said no more. And that's something that, coming of age in Boston, I could relate to. And I think a lot of urban cities in America can relate to. You don't have to be in a literal war zone, but we oftentimes feel like we're in a war zone. So I could relate to the stories of these women. But the one thing that was very different about them that convicted me was their response to being violated by their governments in ways that were unheard of to me at the time.
Right.
Governments breaking into your house, violating you in front of your children.
Mm-hmm.
Their response to that was to run for office. And I just thought, wow, now they tried their families. They didn't let it destroy them. They turned it into strength.
Right.
And I thought, here I am, always working in the nonprofit, working in the business sector, complaining about politics. I need to join up. And that started my journey, my 15-year journey, getting myself ready to run for office.
Right. I see. But I was looking at your background as far as your schooling is concerned, and then all these big names popped out at me. And you went to MIT, Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and then Boston University Law School, School of Law. So you're an attorney, so you have a lot of great experience under your belt. But, again, I had Ruth C's on last week and I clapped for her because, you don't see a lot of color and minorities in schools like this. And so when you see it, you say, oh, either it's they must have known somebody, or what scholarship did they get? Never that we belong there. And when I saw this after meeting you, I said, yeah, she belonged there. I could see her fitting right in at MIT and making a way and paving a way for other minorities to come up. So tell me about what made you decide to go to MIT and then off to Harvard. What made you decide those schools of all schools in Massachusetts?
To be honest, I was headed to Ohio State. I had a full scholarship there in the engineering program. They were paying for my housing for 4 years, and they would guarantee you an engineering job every summer. And when you graduate, and you got honors dorms for a year, and then your own apartment paid for. And
Wow.
I was headed there. I also got into Columbia and Princeton and Cornell, and I only applied to MIT because my physics teacher made me. I had no intention to go in there, and I hadn't replied to all these other schools to say I'm not going because I got a great package. In the early 90s, they didn't give you full scholarships for these schools.
Right.
You had to get loans, and the max scholarship, you still had to get loans. And
Right.
so the state schools would give you a full ride.
Right.
And so I was excited about Ohio State's engineering physics program. And I got a call from MIT, and they said, hey, Nika, you haven't sent in your acceptance to MIT. And I said, oh, I'm not planning to go there. I just haven't gotten around to sending my decline. And the lady says to me, nobody says no to MIT. And me being the obnoxious kid I was like, that's statistically improbable.
I could
I'm
see
sure,
you saying that
I've
too.
heard people say no to MIT. Like, what are you talking about? I think she, I was a kid, so she was probably laughing inside too, like, this kid belongs here.
Right.
And she said, well, why don't you come check us out? We'll convince you otherwise. And I said, well, y'all aren't really giving me any money. I don't know. And she was like, well, it's worth it. Let me tell you. I mean, they were giving me a lot of money, but to me, it was something like 26,000 a year back then. And they were only paying three-quarters of it, which
Wow.
meant I would have to work jobs the whole time, to pay for it. My parents didn't have any money, and I would have to get loans. And
Right.
so she said, come and let me show you that it's worth it. I was like, I work. I pay for all my stuff. I've been
Right.
working since I was 14. I am not spending money on a plane ticket to Boston just so I could show you that I don't want to go there. I was very stubborn. And then
Right.
she says, well, I'll pay for your plane ticket. I was like, I know that food costs money. Like, I work. I'm telling you, I know what money is. She said,
Right.
we'll pay your room and board. We'll pay your food. You can stay for a week. And then I
Wow.
started thinking, okay, everything's paid. And I missed school for a week, senior year. That's
Right.
no joke. She's like, we'll talk to your school about your homework. You know how kids think. I
Right.
was like, free trip to Boston. I'm there. By
Right.
the time I got done looking at all those beautiful black and brown men who were brilliant geniuses, honestly, when you ask why I went to MIT, that was it.
Right.
I was like, who are all of these black men that
Right.
know physics
Right.
and they can like build computers and they're also cute and know how to dance? Because in those days, black kids to get into schools like that, you had to be good at everything.
Yes, it's
So we
true.
were all athletes. Most of us had some form of arts or music. We were all people who were good at math and science, and you had to be personable. which
Right.
most of the white MIT kids were not
Right.
in
Right.
those days.
Right.
And so that combined with sitting in on a physics class that blew my mind because their physics classes there are very advanced from what you get in some other schools.
Right.
And so they were just doing stuff in that room that was like blowing my mind, like doing experiments in front of the kids. And I just sat there. I was like, I do belong here.
Right.
And
Right.
I liked Boston. And so I didn't know that I would love Boston. And so after that week, I was like, this is it. I'm going. I'll pay the money. I'll do it. And that's how at 17, I filled up my suitcase back then before 9/11 kids, any kids watching, before 9/11, you could fill up your suitcase until it was busting out, wrap it up with tape,
Mm,
and you could bring it right up to the gate. You could bring it right onto the plane with you.
mhm. Right. Right. No
And, and so I put my whole life into that. I had to get rid of some of my stuff. My sister, I have 6 younger siblings.
problem.
At that time, I had 4. And my sister was moved into my room within 24 hours.
Mhm.
So I moved out. I moved out. That was it. I got a few jobs and worked through MIT, and the rest is now, I guess.
The rest is now, but the in between was Harvard and then Boston University School of Law.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So again, it's funny that you just described how you got to MIT. And I said, when I saw that you went to MIT, I said, yes, she belonged there. Although you don't see a lot of black and brown faces there, you did belong there. I only met you one time, and that one time you showed very transparent. And I find that there's a lot of great things about you. But as I said to you before we started the live interview, I have to say that, we come from similar places, but your walk has been one of strength and humility in the midst of storms. You were going through a lot of things growing up, but yet and still you stayed the course. And I think a lot of times when people think about politics, they think about somebody who's polished, who has their whole life together, who has been through nothing, and then they go and they sit in these seats and they play politician. When in fact, I know from other people a lot of things about you personally in the community, how you'll get out of your car and go into, gang affiliate spots in the urban community, and you'll walk and talk with the guys like it's nothing, because to you that's normal to get out and speak with people in your community because this is where you live. So in fact, I want to know more about why you want this seat, because I know that it's one of the only it's the majority of the black district. It's a majority of black district. So
Right.
you're running for this seat and you're saying to yourself, I need to get there. But why? What is pushing you to run? And I saw, some of your all of your campaign, and you focus a lot on housing and changing letting us know more about our history in the black and brown community, because I think that we're uneducated. I think that some of us just live in these areas and we really don't know about our community, so we really don't know how to fix it. But it seems like you're willing to teach us, like the history teacher that we never had, and get us to a space where we can be victorious like you. Because again, when people look at you, I don't think that they ever can tell about your history as opposed to where you are today. So, what is the urgency with this seat, and why are you so willing to go into these communities that they say can't be fixed, can't be helped? We can't build houses there. We can't have businesses there because they'll get robbed or they'll get burned down. So, why are you so eager to take this seat and not just fix us, but build us? We can't say rebuild because we've never had a building to stand on or stand in. So tell me about that.
Well, first, I want to say that slavery was a lie, and it's a lie we're still telling.
Right.
There was no such thing as slaves. It was people who got enslaved by someone. But
Mm,
we were never slaves.
mm,
We were always powerful. We were always ingenious.
mm,
We were always highly relational and highly technical.
mm,
We were always able to engage with nature in a way that was um, holistic, healthy, and we were never perfect peoples in all the various tribes we've come from in
Right.
Africa and the Americas, and from wherever we may hail as Black and Brown people. But humans aren't perfect, but we still carry the destiny of this nation to understand true justice.
Right.
That's why I'm in politics, because at some point I realized the nation will never be just until government is just. And government will never be just until Black people fulfill our destiny as leaders in government. And then through our suffering over the last few hundred years in this country, or for some of us, other colonized countries, and we've come here more recently, through that suffering, we have been honed. Our strength has been made great. Our genius has been filtered to the best, and the best of every bloodline is in this generation.
I agree.
And so I reject the lies of slavery that we need to be fixed, that there's something wrong with our communities,
Mm.
that there is something wrong with us. And unlike you, I'm guessing, Tawana, something that was, I'm almost certain, very different about our upbringings. We had similar things happen to us, but we didn't have similar people around us to lift us up every time we got hurt.
Yeah.
And that is what is different about me, not me on the inside, but the community that consistently surrounded me. I had a very broad, deep family network that at the time that I was growing up was very strong. Even
Right.
by the time my little sisters got older, they didn't have as much support because a bunch of my aunts and uncles had their own kids.
Right.
And my grandfather's church that would surround me no matter what my parents were doing, people had their own kids and they got, jobs. And I just grew up at that sweet spot in that moment where my aunts and uncles were young. I was the oldest kid in the city in our family. Everybody was paying attention to me and making sure I was okay. My dad taught me how to fight. I never lost a fight. Not
Mm.
because I knew how to do a right jab, a left hook, which is what my dad taught me. Somebody taught me that's not technically right, but that's how I did it. Um,
Right.
but because whenever I got jumped, somebody was there to pull me out and to take care of that person on my behalf if I wasn't able to. And that taught me not just about how to be physically safe and how much we need each other, but it also taught me how we have to be there for each other to achieve our destiny in general, not just physically, but to believe in ourselves. Like, Tawana, you need me to say, turning out like you was amazing. Look
Right.
at all that you've endured and who you've become, and look at the woman that you're raising right now and how
Right.
incredible your daughter is. And you know all of this, but for people to say it to you constantly, you're wearing my button, which I appreciate. But
Yeah.
do you know what that button means? It means you're victorious. Nika means he or she conquers. So Tawana Nika means Tawana conquers and is victorious. And that name, which my parents didn't know the Greek meaning of it, it has a lot of African meanings that are pleasant. But I derived that power from the biblical Greek name that shows me my destiny,
Right.
which my grandmother taught me at a young age. Thank God I had two grandmothers and two grandfathers raising me whenever my parents were, doing their thing.
Right. Right.
Even when we didn't have a home at times. But I always had a home. And so I always had a home.
Right.
You are a very talented child, and you should not let that go to your head because it's useless unless you use it on behalf of others. And you have the responsibility from God to do so. And if
Absolutely.
anybody else doesn't have what you have, it's your responsibility to share, whether it's your physical wealth or your intellectual abilities or your other strengths or talents. It's not for you. It was a
Right.
gift. You didn't give it to yourself, and it is for the community. She told me that so many times from the age I was like 7. So before I ever heard it in Spider-Man, I I already do. With much power comes much responsibility. And
Yes.
so when I go into the neighborhoods that are just like where I grew up, um, to me that is actually more comfortable than like a suburban neighborhood, because I grew
Right.
up where those are the places where that were dangerous for me. My dad and all his people looked out for me in my neighborhood. If I went to a suburb, a car might follow me. Some of my friends had been raped by police officers when we were in the wrong neighborhood. So you just have a different perspective on what is safe.
Right.
And so my young folks, I feel safe around them, even sometimes when they're acting crazy, even when I shouldn't feel safe because they're not being
Right.
safe. But that's just what I'm used to, so that's my comfort zone actually. When I when I get out of the car, I'm returning home, and people can feel that,
Right.
just like I can feel it. I can feel it in them. These are my people. They can feel
Right.
it when I talk to them.
Right.
They know, and it's not always pleasant. I fight. We fight. Like the other day, I went into Heath Street, and sometimes I hang out in the
Right.
courtyard with the guys. And the older guys, the younger ones don't fight me, but the older guys that are my age, but they're
Right.
acting like kids, and I call them on it. Why are you throwing garbage? I don't care you're drinking. Why are you throwing the garbage here? And this is my district. I don't want you throwing garbage. Oh, what are you going to pay me? What are you doing for me? Oh, you need me to pay you in your own community? You told me you hang out here because it's where you grew up.
Right.
You don't care
Right.
unless somebody gives you some money. And then we're just messing with you, rap. We're just messing with you. We're going to clean it all up. And then they do for like 3 weeks, and so it's like a brother sister relationship with a lot of the guys, especially. Um, some of the women, I have to be different because they've experienced so much aggression that has been harmful to them,
Yes.
that like I come in a different vibe. I try to be more listening. I mean, I listen to everybody, I try to be more quiet, more gentle, just more like chill. That's not my nature. Like I'm not chill by nature. So, but I try to like calm down.
Right.
Especially
Right.
Bostonian women, they don't take crap, man. They don't want you getting all up in their face and touching them and hugging them and stuff. So
No,
I gotta be like,
no,
chill,
that's not
like
true.
cool, like no in the
I
streets, no in the
Oh,
streets,
okay, because
in
I
the
was gonna
streets.
say when I met you, I was very intrigued by just who you are. You have a strong presence, and people say that about me, that I have a strong presence, even if I
Yeah,
don't say anything. And you said something earlier that really struck me, because it does take a village to raise a community, never mind
yeah,
just a child. It takes a village to
exactly.
raise a
Yeah.
community. So for you to be a warrior, so to speak, in the community, I'm kind of like Xena. I don't know if you know who Xena is. You know
Of
who Xena
course I
is?
know
The warrior.
Zena.
All right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's who you remind me of. And it's like you're in the community and you're not afraid. You're not afraid to speak up. But I also get the impression from you that you don't back down. And I feel like Ayanna Presley, and I reference this in a lot of interviews, is that she says that we're not voiceless, we're just not being heard. We all have a voice. In fact, we can talk as much as we want. It's just we're ignored. And then there's somebody like you who can stand in front of us, or not even in front of us, beside us, because as a leader, you're telling everybody, okay, come with me, you're safe. And I think that your safety is what draws people to you. Like, it's okay for you to be. I never was offended by anything that you said when I met you. And I think that you came off like that to everybody in the room who didn't know you. And that was our first meeting. Like, some of the things you said, like when you said, don't say that, I was like, okay. Usually I'm like, what? But from you, it felt safe. It felt like you were trying to teach me something. And I think that you're the type of leader that this community needs. We need to be led, and we're very misinformed, like you said. Who taught you that? Who misinformed you, or who didn't teach you these things? Because you said that slavery isn't true. We are enslaved to something. We're enslaved to our thoughts that we were slaves. So you leading this district, and this is the only majority Black community. How do you feel about being a woman doing this? Because most people will say that politics is for men.
Yeah, well, the way it's designed for white landowning men.
That's what.
And so you got to go in there, not just with some pretty brown skin. You got to go in there ready to be some subterfuge. And there's different approaches to that. And so it takes a bunch of us. It takes a village to raise a Nika, and like you said, it takes a village to raise a community. It takes a village to make a legislature just. And you never hear me talking about, the first, I was the first, blah, blah, blah. Because the first doesn't matter. It only matters who comes behind you. And yes, we have redrawn this district. It's a majority Black Senate district, the only of its kind in the 40 districts, 40 Senate districts. And my state rep district is too small. You have jurisdiction like police officers. Like, you can't get resources outside of JP Mission Hill, Rosendale. That's where my neighborhoods are in Boston. And
Right.
I have to be sneaky. Like, I got to work with Kate Bennett at the BHA. Say, oh, if I get you an earmark, will you make sure that they get some of this in Dorchester, Roxbury? But as a senator, you get seven in this district. You get seven majority Black neighborhoods, because then it adds on to their Roxbury, Dorchester, Hyde Park, and Mattapan.
Right.
And there's so many people as I travel around the district, because I worked the district for like 30 years. And I've lived in six of the seven neighborhoods in the district. Housing instability only recently settled down for me when we bought our first house
Right.
just last year. But there's something different going on right now, Tawana. There's something different. Like, people are rejecting the lies. People are rejecting even the inner talk that's
Right.
lies. People
Right.
are recognizing our power and our responsibility, not only for our communities, but to lead this city, to lead this commonwealth. People are noticing what we always have known in Black and Brown communities. These institutions don't serve us. They're crumbling. Let them crumble, because we have a path of light, and we're doing it in our communities, but it gets criminalized. When we
Yes.
try to survive or take care of ourselves in any way, that's the stuff that gets criminalized. Even though it should be criminal, some of these corporate exploitations that go down, they get rewarded. Who decides that? Legislators.
Right.
So who needs to? I was with a group of kids today at Lena Park Community
Mhm.
Center, and
Yes.
Marcus James, a friend of mine, is teaching them how to fly. Literally, it's an
Wow.
aviation program. They're
Really?
learning how to fly airplanes. Yes. Children
Wow.
ages 9 to 15 are on the simulators, and I was asking, what's this dial do? Oh, that tells me how close I am to the ground. Oh, what's this? What's a knot? That's the speed of the airplane. Like, a 12-year-old is telling me all this stuff, looking at all these gauges. And so I was there to celebrate with them. And I said to them, I need your help. You think things don't work right, but then when I ask you if you're run for office, who's going to raise their hand and come and fix it with me? You don't
Wow.
need to be fixed. The institution needs to be fixed, Tawana.
Right.
The
Right.
institution has criminalized all this stuff, and then we get all isolated and our families separated. And I'm not saying we don't have any agency in that, but
Right.
nobody can do it alone. Anybody you look at as successful, at least anybody that has character and is successful, they
Right.
have been lifted up by many hands. And that's what government should be codifying. I say this all the time since I've been traveling and have a special focus on Black and Brown small businesses. What's
Yes.
going on with Black hospitality? Why aren't they getting their licenses they need? What's going on with our restaurants? Why don't food insecurity isn't just about the problem of not having groceries and farm to table? Yes, but it's also about we don't have restaurants where we can sit down and just eat healthy food in our neighborhood and
Right.
enjoy ourselves, right? And we think, oh, it's unsafe. Why is it unsafe? Okay, well, kids are shooting each other. Why are they shooting each other? We have to be inquisitive. I guarantee you that Newton and Brookline next door, if you go into a rich white community and the kids start shooting each other and taking drugs, what's going to be the question? What happened? Who did this to our kids? Nobody's
Right.
going to be asking what's wrong with the kids.
Right.
They're going to be asking what failed them? Who failed
Right.
them? Fix it. They're not going to say fix the kid. And that's the
Right.
right response. And it's the right response for our children as well. If a
Absolutely.
14-year-old picks up a gun, why do they feel unsafe? Why are they hungry? Why do they not have what they need to the point where they feel that they have to go into a war zone to survive? It is
Right.
because our institutions are killing us and we're letting them.
Hmm. Wow. Whew. You just
So
gave
the
me
responsibility I take and that we all, but to fix our community.
I agree. You just gave me a whole lesson. And I'm sure when people watch this video back, because they do, I was checking my stats and people in Africa watch me, Cape Verde, Italy. So it's very surprising to see. I wonder what they think when they hear these type of shows where I'm talking about the things that happen. A lot of people want to come here to America and sometimes even to Boston, but then they think, I think that our biggest challenge in the Black and brown community, like you said, is that we're lost because we've been told something so many times that we're now believing it. So if we don't believe the lies that we're told, then we need more leaders like you to tell us the truth, even when we won't like it, even when we think that we're not moving fast enough to where we're supposed to be. Because I know a part of your campaign is housing and like in the immigrant communities and economic development, and you talk a lot about these things, but what is your stance on housing, especially with Mass and Cass, and it seems like there's a lot more homelessness in Massachusetts. Nika, is she?
Juan, are you back?
Yeah,
I lost you.
yeah, your connection is a little bit off. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Did you hear me before?
now I can.
Now you can, but did you hear what I said before? No.
The last thing I just heard you say, you're making me think, and then it went out.
Oh, yeah, you're making me think because
I was going.
yeah, no, I'm sorry. So I was saying that you're making me think because when I hear you speak about these things and I realize that we were just misled. And in fact, if we didn't have anybody to teach us the things that you just gave me a whole lesson. So if we don't hear these things, we don't know. And that's what ignorance is. Ignorance is not knowing. But is it that we're just ignorant or is it just that we don't want to know because we've been programmed to do something different? So for somebody like you who's running for the second Suffolk Senate seat, I noticed that you're very. I'm sorry.
Oh, something with your connection. Mine.
Yeah, it's yours. Yeah. She's gonna come back in, you guys. Just give her 1 second. Sorry about that. Some people have bad connections. I'm only a good host. I'm not a good interviewee. So we're gonna have to wait for Nika to come back. Just give her 1 second. You guys, while I'm waiting for her to come back, I want to encourage you now that you see some of the people that are running for second Suffolk Senate. I want to encourage everybody to get out and vote. I think it's important that we understand that, people like Nika, people like Liz, people that are running for this seat, if you see Nika and if you see her somewhere, speak to her about her campaign. You have to know who you're voting for. It is important, especially in the Black and brown community, for us to really win this time. We can't wait until the next time. Like she said, it's not who's in office now, it's who comes after. And that's important. So as I was saying to you, Nika, you just gave me a whole lesson, a whole history lesson, things that I haven't heard from some of the other people that are running for this seat. And I noticed one of the things in your campaign is housing in the Black and brown communities and owning property and owning businesses. Now, see, you're not talking about just, okay, I'll give you a grant to have an apartment for a year or two. You're saying, listen, I want you to own something. I want you to know that you're valuable and that and sky is the limit. So, as far as housing is concerned, because I noticed that homelessness is a big deal, especially here in Massachusetts, especially on Mass and Cass. What's your take on homelessness? And if you take this seat, what are you prepared to do to help this so that people are not sleeping outside, sometimes with their children? And I think it just goes beyond that. I was saying to somebody, most returning citizens, the two things that were affected by is housing and mental health. And I notice a lot of homeless people battle with mental health as well. So, what's your stance on homelessness, and what are you prepared to do if you take the seat?
Well, a good elected official has a plan for getting you off the street. A great elected official has a plan for making sure your rent is affordable. An extraordinary elected official has a plan for homeownership. What I'm saying is we need to go a step beyond even that
Right.
and think about what it means to be an investor. The same getting you out of unemployment is one level,
Mm-hmm.
getting you into a job that has mobility, upward mobility is another level. Teaching you how to be an entrepreneur and have your own side hustles is the next level.
Right.
Teaching you how to be a business developer that develops businesses is another level. And you might be happy at any one of those levels, but we have to think about these progressions so that me being a policymaker is an avenue for you to step in wherever you're at and continue the progression as far as you want to go.
Right.
And that's the distinction and why I'm running for Senate, because we have a lot of good people that can do the job in a good way or in a great way. But if we want to go beyond
Right.
extraordinary, it's going to take extraordinary leadership, not only on my part, but on your part, Tawana, and everybody who votes for me and everybody who doesn't. Actually, the election is September 6th. September 6th is the pilot
Right.
things. I'm a bridge builder between the streets I grew up in and all those institutions you talked about.
Right.
In the Black Panther, I don't identify with T'Challa. I identify with what's his name? Uh, Monger. What's his name, Marcos? Huh? Killmonger. Killmonger is the guy that was raised in the ghetto, and
Right.
he went to MIT and Harvard and all of that so he could figure out how to take the world down. Except I have love in my heart for humanity.
Right.
So I just want to take the institutions down
Right.
and help us rebuild with what we already know works. And so when you pair those types of intelligence, the street with what you learn from being with people in community, with what you learn from church, that faith upbringing, with what you learn in institutions, what it does is it builds a bridge from that being in the street all the way out. And so my legislation starts out by piloting things. And
Right.
so you may know Leslie Cradle, who brought me, she came in all wild one time with stacks of papers, all her ideas like Einstein. We gotta fix this. Incarcerated people don't have housing. And I was like, she showed me the ideas. You have to have the ability to recognize in your constituents when it's Einstein and
Right.
the craziness. If you see a crazy white Einstein looking guy, people think they're smart.
Right.
But we look at our own people and we think they're just crazy.
Indeed.
So you got to have the discernment to say, okay, there's a genius coming into my office. What am I going to do with that? and
Right.
then and then she lays it out, and I said, why don't you pick one thing? And she was like, oh, Nika grumpy. We could do more than one thing, she said. And I was like, let's start with one. I'm new here.
Right.
So she picked the way that when you get out of jail, public housing systematically discriminates against you. And that's something I have been working on. So I was like, perfect.
Right.
So we went through, and I got House counsel, that's the lawyers that work for the House of Representatives involved. And we wrote a bill that made every housing program, whether it was public, whether it was for home ownership, whether it was for building affordable housing, Section 8, vouchers, you name it, and BHA, they had to give a priority and a preference to
Right.
formerly incarcerated people. That's what you call dismantling structural racism and codifying our culture, right?
Wow.
You did your time, you come out, you should be set up, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. And so we couldn't get that through. We got it through the housing committee, and what she was right in one session. But they I offered a pilot, and they funded the Boston pilot at $100,000, and then they gave some $1 million in vouchers statewide in case anybody else wanted to try it. And so the governor recently signed that. So sometime this fall, we're going to be able to support that program. The 100,000 is for supportive services to help formerly incarcerated people, like the guys I was yelling at for littering,
Right. Right.
to help them get housing, which is a pathway to recovery. It's a pathway to job stability. It's a pathway to health and mental health. And but I also have a bill that I worked hard and put a lot of research into, and I'm going to tell you that leadership kind of cherry picked the parts they liked after I did all the work, which I'm gonna talk to them about after this campaign. I haven't had time, but it had four pieces. One was redefine public housing. It has to include ownership, and the tenants need to be able to get a return on their investment. Of course,
Wow.
they didn't pick up on that piece.
Of course
It
not.
had it had make it easier for housing authorities to get land. They
Mm,
didn't pick up on that piece. The two they did pick up on is make it easier for housing authorities to build on the land they have and make it cheaper for them. Because right now it's actually more expensive for people trying to do affordable housing than for people that are trying to do market rate. It's
right.
backwards how everything works. And
Right.
so they picked up on those two. So that's going to be a big deal. And I'm going to have to work on the other pieces in the Senate. But those two do help us. But we have to change our mindset
Right.
about what it means for a public housing authority to expand. So I'll give you an example. When you ask, so Nika, what do you think about it? Okay, so this will tell you everything you need to know about what I think about housing.
Okay.
This story. I like to hang out, as I mentioned. I like to hang out in the. It's not ghetto anymore. It used to be ghettos. I like to hang out in the places that remind me of the ghetto. And
Okay.
so a lot of times that's public housing courtyards
Yep.
when people are out on their stoops and whatever.
Yep.
Or sometimes the grandmas will pull out little lawn chairs by the tennis courts or the basketball courts and just
Mm,
watch the kids. So I was out there when I was running, and I said to the grandmas and the abuelitas out there, hey, what do you want me to do when I get in? They were just finally starting to believe that I could win. Nobody thought I could win that race.
right.
They were finally meeting me, and they were like, oh, maybe you could, Nika.
Mm,
And they said, Nika, when you get to Beacon Hill, we want you to make sure we don't lose our housing. Now, these are women in their 70s, 80s, and 90s.
mhm.
The one in her 90s had like 91 at the time. I think she has more now. Great grands, great great grands. And they have lived in that same building for 40, 50 years. And they're saying to me, go beg for your housing. I was like, usually I'm very respectful for elders. That's a big, you could probably tell in my upbringing is a lot of elders
Right.
keeping me straight. And I said, I'm usually very respectful, but I don't want you to ever talk to me like that again. And they looked at me like, what? And that's not in character for her to talk to us like that. And I said, listen, you in your blood, your sweat, your tears have raised generations. You have worked hard and you invested your money in this land that we are sitting on, public land. And on your watch, it's become the most valuable land in the country. You should be listening to me not to beg for your housing, but to demand a return on your investment. Because
Right.
I know people on Mission Hill who paid $27,000 in 1970, whatever, and now they're sitting on over $1 million of equity.
Wow.
You've given more money in that in rent to the government over 50 years. You might have paid 5 times that amount,
Right.
and, and you're not getting any equity. So we got to redefine how we even think about public housing so that it suits us instead of suiting somebody else. We are the stewards in public housing of public land. We are the investors that is protecting the investment of the city and the state. Why do we get treated like we're the charity case? Because we started out with less due to structural oppression that extends back 200 years plus. So we got to like rethink things and we got to teach. It's
Yeah.
not I'm teaching you, I'm telling you what you already know. That's
Right.
why when I say it, you're like, I knew that. You know what I mean? You're like, that's right. That's true.
Yeah,
When I
because
say this,
the way you're speaking it, it's like before my thought was, well, because I always say this, I hate when people put a band-aid over a bullet hole. And
see, yeah,
in fact, you just completely dismantled it and let me know this is why I think this way. Because
yeah.
in fact, we shouldn't just be thinking about our housing vouchers or saving our apartments, but there's more to that. And
Free our minds.
yeah, yeah, because if you notice my facial expressions, I think sometimes it's because I'm thinking. And
Yeah,
as you know, I'm in school next fall,
yeah.
2023, I will be in law school. And so
Oh,
I think, I do a lot of reading and a lot of people say that I'm smart, but when it comes to things like this, I'm still learning because you're right. I have been programmed. I grew up in systems that always failed. So when I hear you say words like dismantle, destroy, those let me know that these systems were never designed for us and we're never
Mhm.
going to win in them. So they have to be dismantled, destroyed. And, to even ask you, do you think the system is broken? I think that that's pretty much an understatement because the more I hear you talk, the more I hear you say that you're tired of watching people put a band aid over a bullet hole and then try to take it off. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. The way I used to say it to the governor, Governor Baker, because when I first met him, actually, when I first met him, Big Time, uh, Big Time was giving me an award that I felt was undeserved because I had only been there for 2 or 3 months, and I've done a lot of work, but the award wasn't for that. So I was like, okay. So the governor presented me with this award for leadership in government. And he said, "One thing I know about Nika, if you know her, she's going to be a giant pain in the ass."
Mm.
And he thought it was funny. And it was all black people in the room except for him, and none of them thought it was funny. It was like I was the only one laughing. And I was laughing because
Probably
he
would
thought it was
laugh
funny. But I used to so the Black and Latino Caucus meets with him every quarter. And before COVID, it was in person, and I used to bring a letter to him every time.
too. Right.
And it generally focused on youth development and small business.
Hmm.
And at that time, we hadn't yet fully funded the public schools, which we have now done. I fought for that in very many ways, along with many of my colleagues. It took many, many hands to do that.
For you.
Uh, and so this year will be the first year that we institute a 7 year program. It's actually going to take 6 years because we skipped one because of COVID. And so we're double funding this year, which I'm
Mm.
really proud of, that we didn't try to like just skip it and just lose that year. But our schools have been underfunded at $1 billion a year.
Hmm.
And we all know that in the 90s, we call it the Boston Miracle, but was it really miraculous that we actually just started investing in our youth and it worked?
Wow.
And investing in their leadership. And then we pulled those investments. And now kids can't find anywhere to play sports. I mean, you can, but it's hard. They used to come and drive a van around, pick you up, and
Right.
take you places. And there used to be things to do, and we were on our way in the right direction. And then everybody wanted to take credit for it.
Right.
And so they withdrew that investment. So Governor Baker and I were arguing in one of these meetings. I was saying we need full funding, and he was saying, I have a plan to give us more funding than we have right now. And, I did go to MIT, and I grew up raised by a con. I mean, he's not a con now, but my dad was a very good con man, I think, back in those days. And
Right.
so he tried to drive. This is the whiteboard, folks. Okay, this is the whiteboard. You see it? You see it?
It's very
Okay.
small.
This is a little tiny whiteboard, and he's trying to draw like a so-called graph. Here's the x, here's the y-axis. He says, "This is our funding." He makes I would throw away. This is our funding, and this is mine. And he draws a higher line. This is what I want to do for schools. And I was like, don't even give me that. What are you up there yelling and gesticulating about? And then one of the senior members of the caucus was like, "Oh, we're sorry, Governor." I'm like, "No, I'm not sorry.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not sorry. That graph is sorry. Like I don't care if your number is higher than the last number. What matters is if the number is enough for what our babies need. And if you don't care about that, stop pretending." And in my letters, I would say, you can't fund, because I grew up, we got our utilities cut off a lot. I don't know, did you have to deal with that?
I
We used
have.
to, we used to get our electricity, our water back in Ohio. You got to get your water cut off, so all different kind of stuff. And so I said, do you know how much electricity you get when you pay half of your electricity bill? None of it. But you got to pay the whole bill to
Right.
get your
Right.
lights on.
Right.
You're trying to educate children with $1 billion a year underfunding, and then you're complaining to us, trying to take stuff over. That's like enslavement mentality, blaming the person you've enslaved for not working hard enough when they're working harder, twice as hard as you, and you're not giving them what they need. They're working for you. They shouldn't be. They should be working for themselves. That's how our schools should function. We got to turn all this thinking around and stop letting institutions boss us around and tell us what's legal and what's not. We are the people. We should be determining what is legal and what is not. And whatever blesses us, whatever helps us to flourish, whatever helps us to thrive, that's what we need to put in the laws. That's why I need y'all to run for office and
Right.
stop complaining like I had to do at some point.
Right.
Well, keep complaining, but do it productively. I didn't stop complaining per se.
You know, I you know, I have to say this. I'm never lost for words. I usually have a lot to say. What I will say is that I too, as a person who's been doing this podcast for 2 years, and the reason why I started it is for people like you to come and educate us. Because I'll never be too proud to admit that sometimes in areas like this, I'm uneducated, and it has to do with my upbringing and the systems that I was raised in and the people that I was raised around. And again, if you have somebody saying you're never going to amount to anything, all you're going to do is end up in jail, you're never going to change your life, that's the mentality that you walk around with. And then when things start to change for you, you think you're a miracle, when in fact this was your destiny to
That's who
be.
you are. That's right. That's right.
So I thank you for the encouragement, not just for me, but for the black and brown babies in our community that are coming up. I want to be a juvenile defense attorney. I think you have to get them when they're young. You
Don't
have
say
to.
I want to be Tawada. Say I'm gonna be. I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
be.
be a juvenile
There you
defense
go.
attorney. I am in the
Yes, you
process of
are.
getting my fingerprints to volunteer at the DYS on Harvard Street to go in and visit. I think that these are big milestones for me because, again, someone told me I couldn't. My record would hinder me from doing a lot of things, and everything that they said that my record would hinder me from are the very things that I'm doing today. So you're right. It isn't a win. It'll happen. Next year, I'll be in law school and then on to bigger things. And next year, you'll be in the Senate seat and we'll all be happy. And I want people to understand when Nika gets into the Senate seat, we have to look at, she's ready to go right now. She probably has a laundry list of things that she's going to bring to the governor and anybody else who wants smoke because she's ready for the smoke. I can see it. But I also want us
That's
to
not my
get.
smoke. That's their smoke. the guys at FCI Norfolk and some of the youth, they taught me know your smoke.
Oh, I know that's right. And
Know your smoke. That's not
let me
my smoke.
let me write that down because I need to know that. But I
Hashtag know your smoke. That came from James Mackey and the guys at AACC.
know your smoke.
Fuswan and these guys.
That's really good. You know what I noticed about your campaign? Opportunity, prosperity, justice. 3 words. Opportunity, prosperity, justice. You did you
That
choose
belongs to us.
right?
Yeah, well,
Right.
can I show you something? Are we not supposed
Yes.
to do stuff like
So
that?
you can do
Let
whatever
me
you
show you
want.
something. Let me show
You
you
can show
something.
me whatever you
I'm
want.
in my campaign office.
Okay, let's see. Look at them all staring at you like, what is she
That,
doing?
I'm not good at the camera. That's my husband somewhere over there. Corinna's jacket. I don't know. Your hair looks good. So right here, look at this. You see our campaign principles?
Oh
Can you see that?
yeah.
Equity and inclusion, integrity, accountability, wellness, listening, relationship, reflection, respect, collaboration, authenticity, youth leadership, courage, love, perseverance, and fun.
Wow.
And I didn't make those up. Like 5, 6 years ago, we went and came up with what they were, and then we updated them when I started the Senate run. And youth leadership got added because it used to be intergenerational equity or something. And we realized from what the work we have been doing, youth leadership needs to be specifically called out. So all of that flows, and then you're thinking, okay, so what is the core, right? And it comes from the uh, the United States foundational principles that we were told the lie aren't for us.
Wow.
Liberty and justice for all, pursuit of happiness. And so liberty is basically freedom. Pursuit is basically opportunity. I used to not finish the Pledge of Allegiance as a kid. I would stop at liberty and justice. I wouldn't say for all because I didn't believe it. I thought I was having a protest, a cute protest. And then I realized nobody cares. I'm not finishing the pledge, you
Right.
know? And then when I was a kid, we used to have to sing this song, My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a part that's like, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. And of course, as a Black child, I was knowledgeable. My parents taught me, they might have ran the streets, but they sent me to Arambe Aruhu in the summertime, a couple years straight as a small child. So I knew my Black history. My grandmother worked at the Martin Luther King Branch Library. I
Mhm.
knew my Black history. So even in the second or first grade, when I'm singing that, I'm not picturing when they're saying Pilgrim's Pride and the land where our fathers died. I'm picturing my indigenous and African ancestors getting slaughtered. And I'm
Right.
thinking as a little kid, like, why are we singing about that in the major key? You know, like da 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 da. I didn't know what a major key was, but you know what I'm saying. And those like happy tones. And oh, getting older and realizing, oh, there's just lies being told. And a lot of times we get stuck there because we believe that bigger lie that none of it is for us. And then you dig a little bit and you realize we built the whole thing. This whole country is built on the backs of people who were enslaved. We built all of it for free,
Hmm.
not for free at a great cost to ourselves.
Right.
And then it was taken from us. Like in the all of human history, if you build something, it's yours. Okay? And so you build some, well, all of human history, there's been people like enslaving folks as well. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's the concept that we think we have.
Right.
And this enslavement mentality exploits um, our fears and our see, like you don't want to die,
Right.
right? And so people can exploit you, and you got to be willing to die to live. And this is something that these kids run in the streets, they understand that. And when you respect that, they can see that you're respecting them. And then you can help guide them and say, okay, I got something better for you here.
Right.
But you can't just walk in there lecturing like they're not dealing with anything, like they're not
Right.
dealing with trauma, like they're not surviving, right? You got to go in there and say, like I say, for example, you can say a lot of things that basically communicate respect and opportunity. Like, I want you to be free. I want you to have justice. You could, there's a lot
Right.
of ways to communicate that with your behavior and your words. But I say, listen, y'all shooting each other, whatever. There's people down in DC, these white maniacs laughing all the way to the bank. There's a 50, well, now it's 52 billion. At the first time I ever said it, it's a $48 billion budget at the State House.
Right.
The kids y'all are shooting at helped me bring $1 million into Heath Street, which I am now sharing with Mission and beyond. So you can get some jobs.
Right.
What are you doing? You're smarter than most of the people I work with. No offense to them. You're just brilliant. And this is what you're doing with it? I need your help.
Right.
I need your help. What are you doing? You know, same way I fuss at the guys who are throwing the garbage. And I've said this many times, but this is an indication of things that are changing. 3 years ago when I said that, the kids said, yes, rep, what can we do? Can we
Wow.
get some t-shirts? We're there for that. Now the system is still tearing them down. Some of those kids got arrested because when you start coming out and trying to get jobs and do the right thing and you have a record and a warrant, I'm not saying you shouldn't have to face that, but they treat them the same as the kids that aren't involved in the de-escalation.
Right.
They treat them worse than that. And they shouldn't even be treating anybody the way that they get treated because none of that helps. That's why I spend so much time with incarcerated people trying to figure out how they can dismantle structural racism from within. They've been doing it before I got there. I'm just helping. And so it's very exciting times because people wake up fast.
Right.
It's like when I was in India, in some of the impoverished parts of India where they call them the untouchables,
Mm-hmm.
the very bottom castes. If you could imagine it being worse than it is here, you don't have to imagine if you go visit certain parts of certain places.
Right.
India is a wonderful country, but like us, they have some dark things. And one of them is you have these whole family sets that have been told for literally 1,000 years you're in the low caste because you should be. And so when you ask young people there, because I did some youth work over there too,
Mm-hmm.
and you say like, "How do you feel about the caste system?" They look like this, like, "What do you mean?"
Mm.
Well, how do you feel about the fact that somebody born in a different family gets automatically better opportunities than you, and can treat you badly, kind of with impunity? You know, and then they start talking about that's wrong. And the adults are like, why have you never spoken up about it? Nobody ever asked.
Right.
You go through 1,000 years of mental oppression, you need to be asked the question. But it has also honed your genius. So as soon as you're given the opportunity, bam, the genius comes out. And I said to myself, American kids are similar, but we have something that I didn't see as much in India. You're basically born with a sense of justice in America. Like by the time a kid is 6 months old and you try to snatch something from them, they are
Right.
not compliant.
Right. I was gonna say
They're
they're
like,
always trying to
mine,
get back right. Mine.
mine,
Right.
and I was like, if you could combine the strength of these kids who will, in India, I used to work with kids whose parents were being trafficked. Not sex work, people confuse the two. Sex
Right.
work is a choice, trafficking is exploitation, often starting when you're being trafficked as a child.
Right.
And their parents grew up in trafficking and then had them, and now they're growing up in trafficking. And so you don't want that for our children. So we're talking to them and they're in schools and stuff. And these kids have a 98% chance of being trafficked when they get out of 10th grade.
Wow.
And yet, unlike in America, they study like they're trying to get into the best institution. All these kids are getting 95, 96, 97. Only the 98 and 99 percentiles get the scholarship to go. And but they don't have an inborn sense of their value.
Right.
Here in America, it's the opposite. If our kids find out something's a joke and a scam, they're not doing it,
Right. It's true.
which can slow us down sometimes because you can turn that around for yourself if you decide to take it on together with others.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, we know right from wrong. We internalize a lot of stupid stuff
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of racist stuff and a lot of sexist stuff and anti-queer stuff and a lot of anti-Muslim and all. We internalize a lot of stuff.
Right.
But at the heart of it, if you watch somebody get exploited, you know that it's happening and you're like, that is wrong. You don't
Absolutely.
accept that stuff. But
Right.
we behave like we do. And that's why I don't feel like I'm teaching. I feel like I'm mirroring, like I'm seeing the brilliance come off of you, Tawana, and I'm telling you what I see. And it's making sense to you because it is consistent with what you are experiencing. I'm not
Right.
teaching per se. And
Right.
we all teach each other, but we're reflecting to each other something that we deeply know. We know
True.
that justice, opportunity, and liberty belong to us.
It does.
And somebody codified that in our opening documents as a country, our founding documents. And then they said that doesn't apply to Black people or women or white men that don't own land. And that was the lie that we have continued to believe for several hundred years. And now we're not believing it anymore. We're taking on business. We don't think business is just for exploitation. We think business is something we can exploit. And you see us starting businesses. You see people that are running drugs and they're like, I can run a business.
Absolutely.
And then they do because it is a business. And now we're like legalizing that stuff. But I'm not talking about just that. I say all the time, like your grandmother's kitchen, your Jamaican grandmother's kitchen is cleaner than most of these restaurants' kitchens. And yet you're not supposed to be able to start your fish business in there. Whose
Absolutely.
idea was that? That's
Absolutely.
somebody's idea. They're criminalizing our lives and codifying what the bank wants so that they can make a bunch of money.
I,
Who
you
made
know,
those laws?
I never looked at it that way, but again, I feel like this is why we need somebody in that seat that makes us think outside of a box that we've been trapped in for a very long time. And I
100%.
think, it's people like you who will say, hey, listen, my grandmother used to often tell me there's more than one way to skin a cat. And today,
Poor
you
cat.
actually yeah, God rest her soul, she was from Mississippi, but there is more than one way to do something. And I think that we're so programmed for this one way that it's not that we don't want to see, we think there's no other way. So I have to say to the viewers and everybody watching that please, it is important for us to get out and vote. It is important for us to meet people like Nika, to meet everyone who's running for every seat, not just this seat. Don't just go by a last name because you think, oh, she's Black, so I'll vote for her at the last minute. Not all skin folk or kinfolk. I say this all the time. So we have to be careful. Sometimes we vote for people that we think look like us, but not are always for us. In this case, you've heard Nika speak about, where she came from and what she's willing to do. And I believe her. I've heard about her. I know somebody that knows you. Do you know Armand Coleman?
Do they have a nickname?
No, actually,
I don't remember who that is.
he
If I met him while he was incarcerated, he probably told me a different name.
he's out now and he's doing great work in the community. And so,
Armand.
yeah, and so he was
You
thinking
sure he doesn't have a street name?
he may, but I just don't know it.
You
You
don't
know,
know it.
we were
I don't normally know. I don't normally know the other name,
right, and
the
he
legal
was
name.
before I interviewed you, I had already met you. He was like, I know her. I could get her on your show. I said, oh, don't worry. I'm going to make sure she sits in that seat, in the hot seat. But I'm actually in the hot seat right now. You know,
No,
but
I love the hot seat. By the way, you should have him call me though, so I could connect him to whoever. I gotta connect the dots.
right, and in fact, you are I always like to ask around to see if people know somebody that I'm going to interview. I like to talk to the streets, people who are in the streets more than I am, because I'm always sitting at my desk trying to figure out who to put in this seat so that we can be informed, not misinformed.
That's your power. That's your power. That's where you
I'm
belong. Yeah.
tired of being misinformed. So in fact, I have to be in a position where we do win, and not by default. I want
Right.
to win because we're educated.
And we
So
want to win big.
exactly. Go big or go home. That's what they say.
Aren't we sick of crumbs? And you know what? Don't throw me a steak either. That's my kitchen. Get out.
I know that's right. I know that's right. And at this point, I think that we more than deserve it. So, Nika, I want people to know how they can get in touch with you, because again, she's very personable. She likes to talk and answer questions and inform. I think we've been misinformed long enough. So, Nika, why don't you tell us how we can reach you in the months before it's time to vote on September 6th?
Thank you. September 6th, your first day on the job, September 7th. But on September 6th, you got to vote. And I do hope that I can earn your vote and that you'll vote Nika. To help us out with that or learn more, you want to go to my website, electnika.com. Because what you can do at electnika.com, and that's my name. You see my button here, Nika, that word that means like you're victorious. If you put your name in front of it, elect, ELECT, Nika, Nika.com. You can sign up to donate. You can learn more. You can read that story that Tawana was talking about. You can read a short one or a long one. You
Yes, I have.
can catch our updates on August 15th. We're launching our policy video series, which will be ongoing, I hope, as a senator as well. I had started a little bit of that as a rep, and you'll be able to continue to see that. You can sign up to volunteer, to donate. You can, it's that's coming close to GOTV. Your listeners know that means get out the vote, which means you can help us put up signs. You want to see my pretty sign?
I do.
All right, let me show you my pretty sign. This designer person from Ericsson Group who does this, she's insane. She puts together this stuff in like 24 hours. Let me see. I'm so bad at camera work. You see that?
Yes, I have that picture. I love that picture. I like it. It's
And
so
the
nice.
sign, you see it has, let me see if I can get right back. You see it has the languages on it.
Yes, I like that.
Like Julia Mahi, I copied her because she's my rock star.
I like
Anyway, you can help us put that sign up. It's very big. It's 4x8. So
Do you have a phone number, Nika, where you could be reached?
what's the phone number we use around here, guys? I'm gonna tell you fast my cell phone, but you got to be fast or rewind. 617-504-9981. But what's our campaign number? 617-971-8743. That's our campaign number. If you're fast and motivated, you can call my cell phone. But the campaign is 617-971-8743 or electnika.com. Yeah, so you could do that. And you can find our email and our Instagram and our Facebook and Twitter and all that on the website. Now, I got a question for you, Tawana.
Yes.
It's a silly question.
Sure.
I interviewed this kid the other day, and he said, "Oh, Facebook and whatever, those are good, but the real way that you really get the word out now is TikTok."
Yes.
Is that true?
It's very true.
That's true.
I think you should make a TikTok too, Nika. You're very animated. I think it would be perfect for you. Everybody in the chat, anybody that's watching this show, because we've gone past an hour, so people will watch this. Put it in the chat if you think Nika should make a TikTok, because I'm going to give her the votes. vote yes. If you
Okay, because
probably vote
one
no.
time I brought Mayor Wu to meet some kids that had been shooting and some other kids that had come off the streets. We did a private meeting, and I didn't want to tell anybody about it till it was a few months past for their safety. And one of the kids who was just sort of hanging around because it was at a boxing program that Deke Houston does,
Mhm.
and we were using the Mission Safe building. So one of the kids that was hanging around was like, "Mayor," he thought I was the mayor. He said, "Mayor, you're so beautiful." Like a little charmer. He's like 14. Will you do a TikTok with me? I was like, is that the line now?
I've watched you on a lot of videos, and I've actually sent Corinne. I said, I think I see Nika singing at the State House in the back, and she's really revved up. I think she's singing better than the guy singing. I've watched you, so I said to her
I
on
am an
Instagram,
exuberant singer.
Instagram Live, I'm like, that's her. I know that haircut anywhere. That's her. She's like, oh yeah, that is her. I'm like, yeah, she has on the black dress. So so I can always point you out whenever I see you somewhere at an event.
Wow. I gotta be on my toes. Now,
That's her.
I'm not necessarily a great dancer or singer, but I am exuberant at both. So yes.
Everybody, make sure that you go out and vote September 6th. But remember, Nika Elugardo, she's running for second Suffolk Senate seat. And we're looking for somebody who has as much energy as her, because I think at this point, we think we're going to give her a run for her money, but I think she might give us a run for our money. You see what just happened during this interview. Usually I have more to say, but I'm more intrigued by what you could lead us into and bring us out of as far as
So
our.
I got making plans for y'all.
Okay,
They look like your genius and your dreams. I'm holding you to it. We're gonna get it done.
everybody, feel free to. I wrote in the chat, electnika.com, August video series on August 15th, and Nika Elugardo can be reached at 617-871-8743.
Oh,
Anyone that
it's 971. 971.
971, see you guys. Let me just figure this out. Let me just, correction, I'll put an asterisk. Say it one more time, Nika, 617.
617 971
Okay,
8743.
8743. You heard it here first. Anyone that wants to reach out to Nika, please feel free to do so. As you can see, she's very transparent, very personable. It's time for us to really bring some dynamic and change into the communities that we live in, and stop just renting and borrowing. Let's own and lead.
Own
Nika,
and lead. I love it. That'll be my campaign slogan next time.
yeah, that's
Let's
right.
own and lead. I will credit you. Or it could be your campaign slogan after you get finished with your career defending children.
That's right.
Call me up. You
Right.
got my endorsement.
I will. I'm looking to write a law. Maybe you can help me with that.
Oh, absolutely. I like doing that a lot. I
Yeah.
like taking your dreams and helping you write a law with it and getting it passed.
Everybody, Nika, you heard what she said. She likes taking our dreams and making them realities. Thank you, everybody, for joining Not Your Normal Conversation. We did go over a little bit, but it was well worth it. I will see you next week at a different time, 7 to 8. Nika was the exception to the rule. It was important for me to get her here. We appreciate her. So I will see you guys next week, August 8th. 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to interview Pastor Valerie Copeland. And she's going to
Oh,
tell
that's my
us
girl.
where's the church in all of
Yes.
this. So, where everyone wants to know where the church is, tune in next Monday at 7 p.m. and we'll tell you where the church is and where we're headed with the church.
I bet I know what she's going to say.
Everybody, have a great night.
Thank you, Tawana. Thank you, everyone.